Yeah, let's start with the last section of our presentation program this day.
Yes, we are very proud that we have John Mackey here. He is the so-called pioneer of conscious capitalism, and I'm sure the majority knows that he is the co-founder of Whole Foods Market and also the co-CEO. He has written the book Conscious Capitalism, and together with Raj Sisodia, and he also is the co-founder of the Conscious Capitalism movement.
John, we are so happy and so honored you came all the way. You said you've never been to Berlin before, so that was a great advantage for us to invite you here. And I hope you had a great time. And as you came, we had beautiful weather. And we are now very, very excited to have you. You've been leading your company in a very special way. We already see what the talk is going to be about. And you've been leading your company for 40 years. And as Regina said, as a pioneer, when I came across the book Conscious Capitalism by you and by Raj 5 years ago, I already had I immediately connected to the movement. I flew over to the US. I flew over every year to come to the annual conference and really get connected to these entrepreneurs that, like you, want to be the difference in the world and start being the leaders, leading with love. And I don't know at what point it was that I had the idea and thought, ooh, what would the audience need to be like to have John Mackey over here? And so a couple of years ago, so I started to have the vision of having John Mackey, having Raj Sisodia, and having an amazing panel of speakers that we had today over here. And thank you for accepting our invitation this spring. And Regina and I, we
have a great story to tell, and it's a very personal story, and I would like to share it with you because we found it's really, the female energy is rising, and it's quite powerful, and that's why we would like to share it. So Maike and I thought about, we would like to have John Mackey here, but how do we get there? Because we were told, oh, that's not very likely that he will come over. So we decided to make pictures from the whole team, and we did 2 personal invitations, and we approached John Mackey in the US twice. And it was so funny because you should see Maike and myself, and we were looking at each other, and we knew we will not give up. This is something what we want to make happen. And now we have John Mackey. It's a great pleasure, a great honor for us, and we would like to invite you to the stage. And
thank you for being here, John, and for inspiring us.
Thank you. I really just wanted to come to Berlin. I've been to a lot of conscious capitalism conferences, but I've never been to Berlin. So that's how you got me here. And I'm sorry I haven't been at the conference because I've been to a lot of conscious capitalism conferences, and we've been bicycling around Berlin all day and had a wonderful time. The weather's been beautiful. It's a great place to bicycle. And it's been great. So I always hate to be the last person speaking in a day because people's ability to focus by the end of the day of a conference, starting at 8 a.m., is pretty well ended. In fact, I guess I'm a little jet lagged because we went into that meditation. It's like, I'm not sure I'm going to get out of this meditative state to make my talk. But so they asked me to speak on, I've got, like Raj has written, 2 or 3 books now since Conscious Capitalism came out. When it came out 6 years ago. And I've got a new book coming out about conscious leadership. And we're still fighting with the publisher about the title, even though we've turned the book in. And it's something about like how to be a conscious leader, or something like that. But it should be out next May or next June. And this talk I'm doing is actually a chapter in the book, Leading with Love. So, and I'm going to get through it, and if there's time, I'll answer a few questions. Please do not ask any questions about Amazon, because I just don't want to talk about Amazon whenever I go in public. People want to ask me about, what about Amazon's warehouses? And you think they're a conscious company? How conscious are they? It's like, I'm happy to talk about conscious capitalism or conscious leadership or Whole Foods Market or anything, but not Amazon, because everything I say is recorded, the media twist it, and then I get Amazon mad at me. So I'm just avoid Amazon in these public forums. So, what's it going to take for companies? I mean, how many people here are actually business people, not consultants, although they're business people, but are actually CEOs running a company, non-consulting company, or an officer in a company? Or just raise your hand, I'm just curious. I'm trying to feel out the audience. How many of you are in nonprofits? Good grief. We need a nonprofit sector. God, there's a lot of consultants here. That's all right. We'll deal with what we find in the world. Okay. Well, to be successful in the future, businesses are going to have to get a heck of a lot more conscious. And to me, in the U.S., when the Business Roundtable came out recently and talked about businesses having a purpose besides maximizing shareholder value, and they talked about stakeholders, I felt like, wow, finally. This is so important. It's such a milestone, because that's the goal. We have to transform. Business is good. Capitalism is good. I'm like a fanatical capitalist. I believe capitalism is the greatest thing humanity's ever done. It's lifted literally billions of people out of poverty. It's extended lifespans, increased literacy rates. If I was making my talk on conscious capitalism, I would show you a whole bunch of slides to show you how great capitalism is. However, it has to be better. It's very good, but it needs to be better. It needs to be more awake and more conscious. And so some of the qualities that we think, I know when Raj and I were writing the book, Conscious Capitalism, these are things we came up with that we thought were most indicative of where business needs to get to. More awake, more mindful, more conscious. We need to understand the consequences of all of our actions. Why? Because we're completely interdependent. We are all connected together on this planet. We're in an ecosystem that we have to take responsibility for. Gosh, there needs to be to be a conscious leader, we have to be more committed to truth. And there's just so many lies. There's so many lies that are told. It's just very frustrating. Increasingly, as people become more mindful and awake, it's very difficult in business to get away with lying, because you get called on everything. So increasingly, the sense of right and wrong, strong sense of ethics. Conscious leaders and conscious businesses tend to have a strong sense of what's right and wrong. I'm going to be talking about love today, so obviously I think more love and more care is important. We are in a planet now that's moving away from violence. There's less violence on the planet Earth than ever before in history, although you never know it from the media, because all the bad violence gets reported. But statistically, murders, kidnappings, rapes, wars, they're all way down from any other time in history that we know of. More inclusive. We're one species. There's no place for racism or misogyny or all the other things that separate people and keep us from seeing that we are connected, that we are one species, one world. And finally, of course, more environmental awareness. We are in a small planet that we cannot just dump our garbage and our problems and expect them to go away. We have to be conscious. We have to make conscious solutions to our environmental challenges. So, what is conscious capitalism? You know what that is. I'm not going to get into that in any kind of detail, but you've seen it today with Raj. Higher purpose, the importance of stakeholders, conscious leadership being important, and then creating cultures where humans can flourish and thrive. Briefly about purpose, you've heard about it today, but the main idea is that every business has this potential for higher purpose. And the greatest companies that have ever existed, and that we admire the most today, have a strong sense of purpose. Great companies have great purposes. And even though Amazon is, ever since Jeff Bezos became the richest man in the world, they've been under nothing but nonstop attacks. And they are a company that has a higher purpose. They are very customer focused. And they create their business completely around the customer. Amazon to be the Earth's most customer-centric company. Google, our mission is to organize the world's information, make it universally accessible and useful. How many people have used Google in the last 24 hours? Raise your hand. Just curious. The company was only created 20 years ago, and we use it every single day. And it's transformed our lives. It's like you can go into any city, like here we are on our bicycles in Berlin, we just plug in Google Maps, we want to go here, we want to go there, and it just takes you there. It's incredible. Not to mention, all the arguments I now win because I can Google things. And I can just know, see, right here, says this very clearly, that what you believe is, there's no evidence for it. So it's very good at dinners and when you're talking to boring people who are sure they're right and self-righteous but don't really know what they're talking about. Whole Foods Market, our higher purpose, and 41 years now, our purpose is to nourish people and the planet. And of course for us that's a very big word, a very big meaning, because nourish has a lot of different meanings to it, and people and the planet have lots of different meanings to it. So there are different levels to our higher purpose. There's the obvious one, and then there's the deeper and deeper depth that you can go into for that. Yeah, I think I began to get this early in business because Whole Foods had this flood, like 1 year after we were open, that almost wiped us out, and our stakeholders saved us. And I write that up a little bit in Conscious Capitalism book. But the point is, all the stakeholders matter. And I think when I saw the interdependence about stakeholders is when I really got it in my brain. They're all connected. You can't manage the business intelligently and consciously unless you're taking care of all of them. Because when you don't take care of all the stakeholders, when you don't create value for all of them, you create these negative feedback loops that eventually come back to bite you. If you exploit your workers, get away with that for a while, but bad things begin to happen, and people turn over. You get unions, you get bad press, there's anger, sabotage, so it comes back at you. Obviously, if you don't take care of your customers, create value for them, your business they're gonna go over your competitors. If you try to exploit your suppliers, they have subtle ways of getting back at you as well, and besides not wanting to do business with you. Investors obviously are important, and communities. Our businesses always exist in communities. We're part of communities. To be conscious is to be responsible and understand. If you love your communities and give to your communities, they give back to you. It'll be a theme that you'll see in this talk today. Giving and receiving are one and the same. So, conscious leadership. So Gandhi famously said, we must be the change that we wish to see in the world. And the change that I most want to see in the world, I want to see love. I want to see love in our corporations. So, we have to be that love. If I want more love, I have to be that love myself. I have to show up that way. So, again, when Raj and I did some research on conscious capitalism, these are sort of the qualities that we believe conscious leaders manifest: authenticity, more emotionally intelligent, more caring, more loving, high integrity, purpose-driven, spiritually evolved, service-oriented. And I'm going to get into all of these a little bit right now. Starting with emotional intelligence. So, what is emotional intelligence? So, in my experience, most people don't have very much emotional intelligence because it starts with self-awareness. And it's demonstrably true. Most people are not very self-aware. But what I mean by self-awareness? Well, most people don't understand what their purpose is. They haven't connected with their deeper, higher purpose in life. I'm going to talk a little bit later about how you can find your higher purpose if you haven't already found it. Most people don't understand their emotions. They don't understand they don't know when they're feeling angry, or when they're feeling envious, or when they're joyful, when they feel guilty, or resentful, or depressed. Our emotions just seem to be happening to us. We seem to be victims of our emotions. But as we gain self-awareness, we begin to understand that we are actually creating our emotions. We are the author of our emotions. And once you become more self-aware of your emotions, you can begin to choose the interpretations you make in life that will lead to the positive emotions that bring us joy, happiness, and success in life. So, self-awareness, extremely important. Secondly, empathy. Empathy is fairly rare as well. There's fake empathy, where we pretend to be listening to somebody, blah, 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 blah. When are they going to shut up so I can talk? One of the greatest gifts we can give people is just simply to listen to them. I mean, fully listen, be fully present. And when you do that, your heart opens and you begin to have true empathy. When we put these two together, self-awareness and understanding others' empathy, we have a high degree of emotional intelligence. And we have, at least I'll speak for myself, I have had to work my entire adult life, and I'm still working on being more emotionally intelligent. I'm very fortunate that I married this incredibly spiritually awake woman who is, I will talk a little bit how you learn most in life through relationships. And, she's so empathetic and so caring. She's always helping pull me up. The people that we bring into our lives, they can help lift us up, or they can help take us down. So the choices we make for the people that we really love and connect with make a huge difference on our own consciousness. So spiritual intelligence, I'm not talking about religion. I'm not talking about any dogmas. I'm not talking about beliefs. I'm not talking about converting anybody to anything. I'm just talking about this deeper spiritual intelligence, which is like emotional intelligence squared. So people with a high degree of spiritual intelligence, purpose. Purpose is like, try to imagine that right now while we're sitting here, there's radio stations playing. And if we had a radio with us, we could turn it on and we could hear that music, right? If we don't have the radio, we don't hear the music. But it's happening. The radio stations are playing music and talk shows, and Spotify is playing, and Pandora's playing, and yet we're not focused on that. We're not tuned into it, but it's there. That's the way purpose is. The universe. The existentialists who say life has no purpose, there's no meaning. We're all just, there's a big bang, we walk around, eventually the earth cools, and everybody's going to die. It's all meaningless, it's all purposeless. They are not tuned in, because the universe is incredibly purposeful, deeply meaningful. But you have to pay attention, you have to tune into it. And once you do, once you begin to discern that, you'll always wonder, why didn't I get this before? So spiritual intelligence is this sense of being able to tune into deeper and higher purpose, and also being able to communicate it to others. So spiritual intelligence also means having your ethics are very extremely developed. And what I mean by this is that in business, there are always gray areas. There's always this, as you go through life, you're always going to be confronted with the gray areas where you're just not sure, is this okay to do, or is this not okay to do? So the spiritual intelligence, you know when you're crossing the line, because your little voice says, don't do that. That's the wrong thing to do. And so those areas of gray for you become more black and white. Spiritual intelligence, a synonym for spiritual intelligence, in my opinion, is your ability to manifest and share love and care and compassion. And I'm going to talk a lot about why I don't think that exists in corporations today, and strategies that we can do to awaken it. And finally, Plato said the highest values that humanity can aspire to are expressing the good, the true, and the beautiful. And those are really good categories. Pretty much everything fits into that. Human beings have we need beauty like we need vitamins and protein. If your body doesn't get the right vitamins and protein and carbohydrates and fats, then you're going to be sick. If you don't have beauty in your life, you're going to be sick. We need beauty. Beauty feeds our souls. Just like, good examples, music. Music feeds the soul. You know, it takes you to that transformative place where you get into a higher state of consciousness through music. Beauty does that. Similarly, we have a need for the good. We need to be around goodness. We flourish with the good. And when we express the good, we find life to be good and joyful and worth experiencing. Similarly, humanity does not flourish with lies. We need the truth. And we have to hunger for it, and we have to seek it, and we have to express it. And this is what spiritual intelligence is about. So here are some of the things conscious leaders end up doing. The first one, that's a picture of Whole Foods Market team members in one of our stores. You create a shared purpose. People cannot live without purpose. People who have no purpose kill themselves. Purpose and love, we need those things. And we have to, as conscious leaders, create shared purpose that others will want to follow. That becomes something that gives their lives purpose and meaning. And this is a very important thing. People spend so much time at work in their lives. Working is how we sustain ourselves, and to work without purpose, to me, is a sad, sad, sad thing. So we're not here to just maintain the status quo. The status quo is not good enough. So a conscious leader has got to work to make the world better in some significant way. And so the conscious leader, how do we make the world better? Well, everybody will find that for themselves. I'll talk a little bit about my own journey. But I know two things. One is that to the degree we can inspire other people, then we help make the world a better place. To the degree that we have enough spiritual intelligence that we can lift other people up to a higher place. I sometimes play a game when I'm with a really, really negative person. And the game is, it's like a Star Wars. And that negative energy is trying to take me down. But I'm like a Jedi Knight. It's not going to take me down. I'm going to lift their energy up. And so the swords are flashing, and sometimes it's a draw. I'm unable to lift that energy up. But I do all that I can not to have that energy take me down. So we are there to inspire people and to mobilize positive energy in this world to make the world a better place. Write a whole chapter in the book on this, basically how to upgrade the team. If we're going to be successful in business and in life, in any organization, we have to do all that we can to develop other people, to grow and develop other people. And that means their leadership potential, because people have enormous leadership potential. Everybody has unique gifts and talents that need to be teased out, called out, nurtured, and helped develop. And, I'm now at the age where one of the greatest joys I've had in business is watching young people who come in at a young age and they don't know anything, and watch them grow over time, watch them become fantastic leaders. That is so, it's like how many people here are parents? I'm just curious. That's good. Europe's not going to disappear after all from a demographic. Those of you that are parents know that it's such a joy to watch your children grow up. And you have this responsibility to help them become the best versions of themselves. Well, think about that you have the similar responsibility to the people that are on your teams, the people that report up to you. You are helping them to grow. You're helping them to become better people, better leaders. And finally, creativity. At the end of the day, the only lasting competitive advantage any organization has in a world that's changing so rapidly is the ability to innovate. And innovation comes from creativity. So we have to unleash it. And it's mostly bottled up in most companies. And I will talk about that a little bit more as we go along. I'm a tremendous believer. This is also a chapter of the book. Find win-win-win strategies and solutions. And as I was writing the book, I have two co-authors. As we were writing the book, I had kind of a breakthrough because this was a chapter that I originated. And I just realized something I never quite realized before. A win-win-win is almost, and perhaps is, a complete ethical system. Anytime you're in an ethical dilemma, if you put the framework of win-win-win on, you will have a solution to your ethical confusions and quandaries. And so what does win-win-win mean? It means, well, first, it's not lose-win. It doesn't mean you lose, that you're sacrificing your own best interest, although it could mean that at times, but generally it doesn't. So you need to win, and whoever you're working with, they have to win. And then, so it's win-win. And Stephen Covey says in his great book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, if you can't find the win-win, no deal. No deal. Don't make deals with people who are looking for you to lose. You can always walk away. And many people think in terms of that win-lose. It's so ingrained that the whole idea of business is to win in some way. It's a metaphor I'm going to criticize in a little bit. But once you begin to think win-win, that's a huge step. But the third win is what really makes it work. And that is everybody wins. So it's good for me, good for you, good for all of us, good for the whole community, good for the planet, good for the nation. Whatever your community reference point is, this is something that has to point back to not just my interest and your interest, but what is the collective interest we have. And so if you begin to use this framework as you go through life and business, and ask yourself, all the time I'm asking myself, what's the win-win-win? And you know what? Once you give your mind permission to think that way, it starts to be creative. It starts to come up with solutions to problems that you never imagined to be possible. For example, when Whole Foods Market was going through a dark night of our soul just a few years ago, when we'd been so successful for so long that we finally were no longer flying under the radar competitively, and every supermarket chain was gunning for us, and they began to copy our store designs, they began to copy our products, they began to copy our marketing. They didn't have the same authenticity. They didn't always tell the truth in their marketing. But it began to hurt Whole Foods. And we began to see our same-store sales, which had climbed at an 8% compounded annual growth rate for 30-plus years, began to decline and actually went into negative territory. And in the United States, it's a flaw in the U.S. capitalistic system, is we have shareholder activists that come in. And we got shareholder activists that came into Whole Foods, JANA Partners. And if I had more time, I could tell you some stories about JANA. But the main thing here is that they wanted to take over Whole Foods. And they wanted to fire me, fire our board, and put us up for sale. And we thought that would be like the death of Whole Foods. Everything we'd built for all these years would have been trashed. And so we had to decide what to do. And I just kept asking the same question over and over and over again. What's the win-win-win? What's the win-win-win? And one day I woke up and I saw it. The win-win-win is, would Amazon be interested in buying us? Because that would be a win-win-win for a number of reasons. Every stakeholder won in that transaction. There's absolutely no question about it. And again, I told you I'm not going to talk about Amazon, so I'm not going to go into that too much detail. But I'm going to say for sure that, and I write it up in the book, I tell the story of how we met Amazon, love at first sight, whirlwind courtship, and And then we were married just a couple of months after we met on an endorphin high, make no mistake about it. And that ended up being truly a win-win-win-win. So you'll just have to take my word for it and buy my book, because I do it in some detail, and I'm conscious of the time today. But anyway, back to the main idea here, that this can prove to be an ethical framework to examine everything you do in business. If you just keep asking that question, what's the win-win-win, you will get some amazing, amazing results. The importance of servant leadership. What do we mean by that? Well, by servant leadership, we mean the leader is not about your ego. It's not about how important you are. It's not about how much money you make. It's not about your status. Where are you in the social pecking order? That's what drives many leaders to want to become leaders. They get more important in the world. And I think the speaker before me was talking about being motivated by a sense of lack. And I think she nailed it. I think that's true. So servant leadership is just basically giving yourself over to your purpose and to the stakeholder model. So you're a leader. If you're a leader in a company, you're serving your customers, you're serving all the stakeholders, and you're serving the higher purpose of the business, and hopefully in a win-win-win manner. Albert Schweitzer, one of my personal heroes, and he said it, it's right here. I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I know, the only ones among you who will really be happy are those who have sought and found how to serve. Service, I'm going to talk more about this a little bit later. Service is one of the keys to happiness in life. You can serve your children, you can serve your family, you can serve your higher purpose, but people that do not serve are ultimately trapped in narcissism. And narcissism always leads to misery. It may lead to power, it may lead to wealth, but it will not lead to happiness. Service leads to happiness. You can't get to be a conscious leader. The culture can only pull you up so high. At some point, you have to go beyond the culture, and that comes through your own sense of purpose, your own intentionality, and you have to work at it, is basically what I'm saying, and it's not easy. So I already talked about in emotional intelligence, self-knowledge, but Socrates thought this was the highest thing, to know thyself. So it starts there. It starts again with self-knowledge. So follow your heart and find your purpose. I said earlier that if you don't know your higher purpose, I can tell you how to find it, and you will find it as you follow your heart. So let me give you an example of that, and that'll be from my own life and how I found my own higher purpose. So when I was about 19 years old, maybe I was 20, 19 to 20, I was a student at the University of Texas in Austin, and I was studying philosophy. And I had to get a degree, as you know, there are always required courses. Required courses by required professors and required books. And in this particular class, which I needed to get my degree, I did not like the professor. I did not like the books I was being forced to read. I didn't like anything about this class, which began this argument that went on in my own soul that lasted for about 2 weeks between I have to discipline myself, I have to buckle down, I have to do this because this is required, versus I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't like this. I don't like this professor. He's a windbag. He's got nothing to teach me. I don't like these books. They're boring. I don't want to do it. You have to do it, John. Your parents will be so disappointed. You will not get a degree. What are you going to do? It's like, what am I going to do if I get a degree in philosophy anyway? Well, I have to be a lawyer. I don't want to be a lawyer. And so this argument's going back and forth. And then one night, I'm forcing myself to read this book. And I stood up and I threw the book on the table and said, I'm not going to read this book. And I started working through them. Okay. I dropped the course the next day. And from that point onward, I never took another class that I wasn't interested in. I've never read another book I didn't want to read. And of course, my parents were really angry at me. However, so I now have, like, in US terms, I have 120 hours of electives. And close to a 4.0 perfect score, but no degree. And that doesn't even include all the classes I audited. And that led to me finding my higher purpose, because from that point onward, I began to be authentic and true to myself. And so, like a year later, I moved into this vegetarian co-op in Austin. I wasn't a vegetarian. I just was interested in all things counterculture. So I moved in. I thought, man, I'm going to meet some super cool people in this vegetarian co-op. And I did. I met my girlfriend that I ended up starting Whole Foods with. But I also learned everything about food. My food consciousness awakened in that co-op. These were a bunch of vegetarians. They knew a lot more than me. They woke me up. I became a vegetarian. I learned how to cook. I was on fire about natural and organic foods. All I wanted to do was, I read cookbooks for fun. I just wanted to spread natural and organic foods. This would transform the world. I was so excited. And I remember one day coming back to the co-op and talking to Renee. And I said, Renee, my girlfriend, and I said, what if we started our own natural food store? She looks at me, she says, oh, Mac, oh man, that would be so cool. Term of endearment. And so at that time I was 23, Renee was 19. So we did. We started a business up, we went out and hustled, we needed to raise $50,000, we raised $45,000, that's all we could get. And from friends and family, the typical thing. And so Renee, well, my resume reads dishwasher, busboy, boys camp counselor, CEO Whole Foods Market. And I had no experience. It was crazy, except for one thing. I was absolutely on fire. I was fulfilling my own higher purpose in life. I was so passionate. I had taken no business classes. I read hundreds of business books. I couldn't get enough of it. I'd start in a business. I needed to know what was going on. And then every time we'd make a mistake, and we made so many of them, we'd learn from it. And the business just took off. And I will come back to Whole Foods in a little bit. But that is how I found my own purpose in life. It was actually by stopping doing what everybody else wanted me to do, my parents, my friends, and just got in touch with what I cared about. And then that led to the awakening of my food consciousness, and I found the higher purpose in my life. And I submit that's probably how most people find it. Can't know for sure. I can only know my own example. But based on all the books I've read about entrepreneurs, they generally, something like that is the same thing. They, if you read about Bill Gates or Steve Jobs, they have something. Gates and Jobs got so interested in computers, they just dropped out of college and just started their businesses. And so, anyway. Life's about learning and growing. And so this is a good segue into this. When you're a kid, you always are learning. If you have a parent, you watch your kids, every single day they seem to be learning something new. It's like, oh, this is so cool. Well, why does it stop for us? We should learn every single day. Every single day is an opportunity to learn and grow, become wiser, kinder, better. And I actually think when you stop learning and growing, you're starting to die. I really do. So, if we're gonna learn and grow, we're gonna make mistakes. We're gonna have to learn from those mistakes. We have to be willing to take chances. Relationships, and at least in my own life, but I think for most people, I've learned more in my relationships than anything else. I learned more from my parents. I particularly learned from my wife, who's just very spiritually awake, very very conscious, and very very patient. And has helped me tremendously. But also friends. You know who a friend is? A friend is somebody who will tell you. Well, a friend is somebody who's happy when you're successful and sad when you hit a bad time. That's how you know who your true friends are, by the way. They're not envious of you when you're successful. and they're not gleeful when you're down. Okay, those are your true friends. And anybody that's not that way is not really your true friend. But your friends are also the ones that will tell you the truth, give you the hard feedback you need to hear. Because most people won't, particularly if you're a successful person in the world. Most people, they pander to you, they flatter you, they try to tell you things. Your friends will tell you the truth. So you will learn the most in life from your relationships. We can't learn anything unless our hearts and minds are open. And most people get hooked on some kind of ideology that they use as a framework. They judge everybody in terms of their ideology, and that keeps them from learning and growing. And then practice the virtues of gratitude, care, compassion, generosity, and forgiveness, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about soon. I like this picture because I was a young man, relatively young. This is actually on my wedding day, 37, and that guy next to me is my father, my dad was my mentor. I really believe the importance of mentors and coaches. I think those are very, very important. In my case, remember all those classes, all those electives I took in college? Well, none of them were business classes. I told you, when Renee and I started, Renee was a pizza delivery. That's what she did. That was her experience in the business. We had no experience. But fortunately for me, my father had been an accounting professor at American University, Rice University in Houston, where I grew up. And then he went into business and became a CEO of a public hospital management company before he retired. And so from age 24 to 40, 16 years, I never made a major decision in Whole Foods that I didn't check out with my dad first. And that was a very fortunate thing, because I'd have driven the Whole Foods bus right off a cliff. I tried to several times. Fortunately, my dad grabbed the wheel and said, "Don't do that. That's a stupid thing. Don't do that. That's a very, very bad idea, John. Don't do it." So we had this great relationship. It was very close to my dad. And then something happened at about my age 40. At age 40, Whole Foods Market had gone public. And we'd been public for a couple of years. And then my dad was in his 70s, and he was gotten increasingly conservative. He'd become fabulously wealthy. My dad made so much money on Whole Foods Market going public, become very wealthy, and he just didn't want to lose that money. He was in a different place in his life cycle than me. What I wanted to do, I wanted to grow Whole Foods Market. I really wanted to grow it. We only had, that time, and after 2 years after going public, we had about 20 stores. I thought, man, we can make this company really big. Dad, take the foot off the brake. Let's gas this thing up. Let's get going. And he said, John, we're really successful. Let's not screw up here. And so we were fighting with each other. We'd be in the boardroom screaming at each other. And I'm a public company. These father son yelling at each other. Got these outside directors like, what is going on here? This is not the way a company's supposed to be run. And then I realized I actually needed to fire my dad. I needed to fire him as my mentor. I needed to fire him off the board. And that was such a difficult decision. And I remember going to him and I said, Dad, this whole thing is wrecking our relationship, wrecking the company. I really want to grow Whole Foods. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to leave the board, and I want you to sell half of your stock tomorrow. And you'll have all the money for the rest of your life. You'll never have to worry about money ever again. But leave half of your stock in there, because we're going to grow Whole Foods. It's going to be amazing. You just stand back and watch what's going to happen. And my dad said, John, you know what you're doing. I said, Dad, I'm 40 years old. I'm 40, Dad. And he said, 40? You don't know anything. and I knew more at 40 than I knew at 24, that's for sure. But my dad was kind of right. I didn't know that much at age 40, not compared to what I know now, and probably I'll know less today than I'll know in about another 10 years, hopefully. At some point, the brain begins to disintegrate, and you actually don't know as much anymore, but I'd like to think I'm still ascendant. But anyway, I'm telling you this story because we need mentors. and we need coaches. And by the way, the company exploded after my dad left the board. We grew. The stock price had doubled within a year. And so my dad was actually worth more money a year later, even after selling half his stock, than he was before. So he admitted that it was a good decision, and we made up, and we lived happily ever after, at least until he died. So the point of this story is we need coaches, we need mentors. So if you're an entrepreneur and you have a business, you need someone to help you, someone that's a little more experienced, a little more seasoned, just to bounce ideas off of. So I really do believe in executive coaching movement. At Whole Foods now, we're running a lot of our senior executives through executive coaching programs and leadership training and development. And then there does come a point where you may need to fire your coach and mentor, though. And that was my big takeaway from this story. We can learn in absolutely every situation that we're in. If we will just keep our hearts and minds open, everyone can teach us things, every single person. And what we do is we tend to categorize people and put them in a box, and we stop listening to them and we stop learning. Foolish. Because it's like the universe is constantly trying to wake us up, constantly trying to help us learn and grow, if we will just listen and just be present. So, when we're under a crisis, this is such a great opportunity you can make the biggest breakthroughs you'll make in life in crisis. Next to relationship, in my opinion, crisis is the best opportunities we have to grow as human beings. However, when we're in a crisis, the human thing to do is to go back to a safe place, to contract. Go back where it was safe. And we close our hearts and we look for the safe place. We regress. That is the human response. Here's the thing. There is no safety. There is no safe place. Not really. Not really. Not in this world. There is no ultimately safe place. We're not children any longer. Mommy and daddy aren't there. There is no safe place. And once you really understand that in your being, then you won't regress. Instead, you will lean into that crisis. You will open wider. And it hurts. And yet that's when the learning happens. That's when you can have the breakthroughs. So for me, that crisis, I've had 3 or 4 crises that just totally wrenched me in the 41 years. 2 coups, 2 failed coups that tried to throw me out. I can't tell about those coups in public until the what do they call people that are the coup people? The rebels or what? Until they're dead. I just feel like, out of courteousness to them, I won't tell their stories until one of us, until they've left the stage here. But then maybe someday, if nobody will be interested, I'll probably never tell the stories. So, but I told the Amazon story, and there's the flood story we talked about in the book. But the Amazon story, again, the Jana and the intense pressure, I didn't sleep hardly at all for months. It was so much pressure. You just have no idea. There's got 90,000 team members counting on me, and millions of customers, and tens of thousands of investors. And you gotta step up. You gotta make the decision. You've got to open. And so, one of the things that helps in any crisis is to do spiritual practices. This is the time to try to meditate, to quiet that mind down, because your brain starts going like, the speedy brain is insanity. When people are in nuts and insane, they have a mind they cannot shut up. It just blah, 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 blah. Fear begins to run rampant. So spiritual exercises can quiet the mind. And when the mind is quiet, then the little voice, the deeper voice, can speak. It's always speaking. We just can't listen to it. We can't hear it because blah, 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 blah. So you've got to quiet the mind. Difficult to do in crisis. So very important to engage in spiritual practice and meditation during that crisis in particular. Here's a paradox. Almost all the greatest wisdom of humanity is collectively available at the touch of our fingertips right now, virtually for free. And yet, just like we poison our bodies with junk food, we poison our minds with junk information. It's a simple, sad tale about humanity that we could get into the reasons why humanity wants to poison its body and poison its heart and poison its mind. It's a spiritual sickness. However, I'm trying to make you more conscious of it. Study the writings of very wise people. And when I just tell you how my daily practice is. I am a business person. I'm very busy. If I can meditate 15 minutes, 20 minutes, I feel like I'm such a spiritual hero. That's so important. But I do it in the morning. So I start my day off with gratitude practices. I'm going to talk about gratitude in just a couple of minutes. I start with gratitude practices. Then I read 10 minutes of some type of spiritual text that will get my mind in the right place. And then I'll meditate for 15, 20 minutes. And then I start my day. And I try to do that wherever I am. Otherwise, you know how we're busy. Business people are busy people. And we get caught up in the day. And then we race off. So starting that day off right is very, very powerful. Here we go. Spiritual exercises. I've done all of these at some point or another. Any of them work if you just practice them. If you don't practice them, they don't work. Guess what? But if you practice them, they do work, and they compound over time. So the question is, can you build a business based on love? You can, but it's not very easy. And mostly because love is stuck in the corporate closet. Why? Why are we so terrified of love in our organizations? And we are. We keep it locked up. We're afraid of it. I'm convinced the main reasons we do is because of the way we think in business about the way business world works. The metaphors that we use to think about the world structure our consciousness. And the major metaphors that dominate business thinking all are around hyper-competition in one form or another. Starting with war metaphors, right? So we're going to kill those guys. Let's go into the war room and plot our strategy for world domination. Just kill or be killed. I really have no choice. Sorry. I know I've got to do this for the good of the organization. And I think the point of it is that there's no place for love at war. Love is something you got to check at the door, because we're at war here. And that's just going to weaken us. Love is going to weaken us. It's going to make us soft and sentimental. Can't have it. If it's not war metaphors, it's Darwinian metaphors. It's a jungle out there. This is survival of the fittest. Only the paranoid survive. Think about that. Andy Grove said that in Intel. Only the paranoid survive. So only if I'm scared to death all the time can I survive. It's kind of what that's saying, right? When you're scared, no place for love. Love's got to be hidden away. And finally, we have sports metaphors, which are win-lose. All sports metaphors are win-lose. We win, they lose. Yay for us. And yet the essence of business is not win-lose. The essence of business is win-win-win-win-win for all the stakeholders. Competitors, I'm not saying there's not an element of competition in business. Obviously, there is a strong element of competition. If we reframe competition as a way to excellence, our competitors make us better. Our competitors force us out of complacency. They teach us the most. We can learn from them to make ourselves better, and we help them get better. We're on a mutual quest for excellence. If you reframe competition away from war and away from Darwinian survival of the fittest and put it in its proper context, which is to help us become better, then, and only then, can we release love into our corporations. Until we move out of hyper-competition as the framework and begin to realize that we are a community. What are some better metaphors? Purpose. Your business exists to fulfill a higher purpose. Stakeholders. We are a community of stakeholders. We're in this together on a mutual quest. We're exchanging with each other for mutual gain and value. There are so many better metaphors than the ones that business has come up with. And until we begin to change those frameworks and those metaphors, we will not release love. So I'm just telling you that. So you got to think about how you think about your business. We can't have love when we're scared. If we manage through fear, if we intimidate people, if we are always showing how macho we are and how tough we are, and always putting people in their place, then people won't open their hearts. They won't share love. If you want to create an organization with more love, promote loving people. It's not that hard. Promote the people with a higher degree of emotional intelligence. I always say basic intelligence is like the ante in the game. Yeah, you don't want to promote stupid people. You need smart people. But you want smart people that are also emotionally intelligent. You want both. If you get nothing else out of my talk today but this one thing, you'll go away a much more skilled leader. People flourish when they are appreciated, authentically appreciated. At Whole Foods, we end all of our meetings with appreciations. In fact, appreciations became such a big deal at Whole Foods that the value of that is it's very difficult to maintain judgment of people who've just appreciated you. Somebody who you've been, you're in a meeting and you're judging this person, and then all of a sudden you get an appreciations, and Mary says, "Gosh, I really want to appreciate John for all the thoughtful things he did when he visited our store and our stores and the kind things that he said." And I'm thinking, yeah, I know maybe I misjudged Mary. She's actually she's a really good person. And of course, when you're doing appreciations yourself, you cannot authentically appreciate anyone without an open heart. You just can't do it. To appreciate means that you open your heart, and your appreciation is a form of love. And so when you open the heart is when you do an authentic appreciation. So we end our meetings with appreciations. And at Whole Foods, like our top 30 executives come together several times a year. We end our meetings with appreciations. We used to have to do appreciations like over a 2-hour period because it just went on and on and on. And we didn't want to cut anybody off. People are doing this love, and it was really great for morale, but it was taking a lot of time. So then we went to say, okay, here's the deal. You get to appreciate 3 people. That's it. That's the cutoff point, just 3 people. And then people started gaming it because they'd group them into, a bunch of people into one appreciation. And so then we had to just make it simple. Listen, think about this very hard. You get 1 appreciation. You can go appreciate everybody after the meeting, but you get 1 public appreciation. And now we get our appreciations done in about 30 minutes instead of multiple hours. But try this in your organizations. I promise you, if you do this, this one practice will transform your organization if you do it. And you have to be, if you're the leader, you have to do it as an example because you have to set the pace for it. And people have to understand. And by the way, when the leader authentically appreciates people, they light up. There's an old saying, appreciate in public, reprimand in private. So when you have to discipline people, if you embarrass people publicly or reprimand people publicly, they may never forgive you. You may have made an enemy for the rest of your life. They may never forgive you. That's a sad thing, but oftentimes the case. Now I'm just going to get to the heart of this thing, and I'm not almost done, but we're going to talk about love. We're going to get into the guts of it. Love is a complex emotion. It has many different sides to it. It's like there are many faces to it. So to really practice love in our lives and in our work, we have to practice the various faces of it, starting with gratitude. Remember how I said I start each day with a gratitude practice? When you are truly grateful, you're no longer concentrating on your own problems. Most people's consciousness contracts down to their worries and their fears and their grievances. That's the inner dialogue that we often experience. But when we practice gratitude, we shift it. And here's the reality. We should be grateful. That's a simple fact. Do you know how amazing it is to be alive? First of all, there's never been a better time in the entire history of humanity than to be alive right now. This is the best time there has ever been. That's a good place to start for gratitude right there. But how about this? We are alive. You ever just think about that? how amazing that is? We can touch. I can walk. I can feel. I can love. I can sing. The world is so beautiful. You can experience that every single day. I didn't want to be in a conference room today. I want to drive around Berlin and experience the awesomeness of this incredible city. And I did, and it's amazing. So gratitude opens the heart, and opens the heart to love. And here's the thing. When you're grateful, you're happy. When you're grateful, you want to serve. Gratitude and service, they lead to happiness. They do. If you practice it, you'll discover it for yourself. I already asked a question about children, so I always try to get people to get into care by understanding if you have children, you're going to care, okay? That's just, unless you're just a total narcissist, some people are, but children, how can you not love your children? And how can you not care for them? I mean, I have seen people that are the, kind of grouches, but when you ask them about their children, they get all soft. And a little smile breaks out on their face, and they go back into love. And children are a way back into love, and we spend our lives nurturing and caring for them. And if those of you that don't have children, I don't have children. I mean, no biological children. But you can care for your friends. You can care for people that are less fortunate than you. I do believe practicing care for people is a good spiritual exercise. And it's just fundamentally a good thing to do. You will be a deeper, better person for caring. Because again, when you're caring for someone, you're empathetic with them. You're out of your own little bubble world of narcissism. You're in there helping someone else. So I'm a great believer in volunteer work, great believer in service of any form and fashion, because they're all forms of care. Compassion. Compassion's the flip side of that. I was talking about gratitude, because remember I was telling you how utterly amazing it is to be alive? It is amazing. We should be grateful. Here's the shadow side of that, though. We're all going to die. We are only passing through here. We are not here that long. We're not only going to die, we're all going to suffer. And everyone we love is also going to die. And they're also going to suffer. Because the reality of this world, the Buddha had it right. This world has a ton of pain and suffering. We're all going to get old. Beauty is going to leave us. I know. And you can have inner beauty, but physical beauty does fade for sure. And there's only one appropriate response to the pain, the outrageous pain and suffering that exists to be alive, and that is compassion. Compassion for everybody that you encounter, because if you look at them and you see they're going to suffer and age and get sick and have bad things happen to them and die, how can there be any other response? Compassion. Compassion for the reality of the pain and suffering in this planet. So somehow or another we have to hold both gratitude for the awesome amazingness of being alive and stay conscious of the fact that pain and suffering, our own pain and suffering, but the pain and suffering of everyone is a fundamental spiritual reality, and compassion is the right response to that. And so whenever you're about to judge somebody, if you look at them and say, I'm so sorry, you're also going to die, aren't you? Why should we be mad at each other? We shouldn't be mad at each other. We should have this compassion for each other and help each other. That's what human beings should do for each other. And I might add for animals as well. Everything alive that's sentient has a consciousness, and they suffer. And having compassion is the right thing to do. Generosity. And I mean generosity in money, and time, and energy, and spirit. These are this very important quality. And there's a saying, you should give until it hurts. Yeah, I don't like that, because I think generosity is like a muscle that you develop over time as you practice it. You should not give until you hurt, because if it hurts, you're going to be less generous in the future. Instead, practice generosity. Just practice it, and you will find that you feel good when you're generous. I mean, I love giving things to people. I love giving money away. I love giving things to my friends. I love being generous because it makes me happy. And so I'm generous, and I think it'll make you happy too. I talked about appreciation, so I'm not going to go into this any deeper. But I will just say one thing. I read this book many years ago, way before most people's time. It's called 1 Minute Manager. It was a bestseller in the U.S. for a long time. And one of the ideas I got out of that book that I've kept is catch people doing something right. Because that's so that is so good. When I go tour our stores, the last thing I want to do is be a fault finder when I'm in the stores. Now, somebody has to be a fault finder. We need to hold our stores up to high standards. But it's very important that I not be the fault finder, because at Whole Foods, like it or not, I'm daddy. And when daddy comes, they fix the stores up. They might get up at 3 a.m. in the morning to go start fixing their produce up. And recently, in fact, I was touring these stores in Colorado, and this woman comes up to me and she says, "You're John Mackey, aren't you?" And I said, yes. And she said, "You know, the store never looks this good." "I think they did it because you're here." And I said, "I think that's right." "Well, how come it can't be this good all the time?" And I looked at the leadership and I said, "Hey, how about that?" But the point is, they don't want my judgments. They want my appreciation. They want me to catch them doing something right. They work their asses off to make the store look good for me. And I just go into those stores and I just go around appreciating everybody, getting my picture taken. Oh my God, I hate Instagram. Because I have to just pose for pictures when I'm out touring the store. And each picture is just chronicling my aging process. So do appreciate each other. Catch people doing something right. And of course we have to hold our standards. This does not mean that we don't hold high standards. It just means people do better when they're loved and appreciated. It's just the way it works. And the final thought I'm going to leave you with here is forgiveness. This is the toughest face of love to practice. And the reason it's so tough is because we think if we forgive someone that we are condoning their actions. That is the mistake in consciousness that we have to overcome. Because to forgive someone is not to condone their actions. It's simply to let go of the poison that you've put into your own soul by holding on to this judgment and grievance. And people that hold on and nurse grievances, if they could ever do a study, they get cancer, or they have heart attacks, and they're unhappy. It's kind of like the saying is, it's like we drink the poison that we really want to give to somebody else. We drink it ourselves. And so it makes us sick. It makes our soul sick, and it makes our body sick. So how do you forgive people without condoning them? Condoning the actions? You have to practice it. You just have to do the spiritual work internally. And the simple thing to do, particularly if you're doing a morning practice or sometime you're doing some type of even a brief spiritual practice, what I do is I just visualize the person in my mind. And then I just say, "I forgive you. I wish you well. I wish you peace. I remember that they too are going to die. They too are going to suffer. And whatever they did it out of some fear or greed or selfishness, something I know is not going to make them happy. And I just try to let it go." And I practiced forgiveness so long that I've gotten good at it. It's a skill I personally now have. I don't hold on to things because I recognize I'm poisoning myself. I don't want to hold on to it. So I practice forgiveness. And this is the final thing I will leave you with here in this talk today. You are a prisoner of your grievances and judgments. And they will hold you back in life, and they will hold you back in business. They really will. You got to let them go. And you have to practice it because it's not easy. So I'll conclude by saying personal growth to choice. The hardest challenge we will have in life is not leading others. It's leading ourselves. We're tough to lead. It's also our greatest opportunity for service. And the rewards of service are basically limitless. You just have no idea how amazing service is until you start practicing it. First, this is our challenge. If we're going to be conscious leaders, this is the ultimate challenge. First, we have to become conscious and open our hearts. And when we open our hearts, love flows. And then we share the love with actually everyone we encounter. That's our mission. That's our purpose. And you want to know what I think? I think that's actually every one of our higher purpose in life. That's the one thing we all have in common. We're all here. If we want to change the world, change yourself. Become a more loving person. And then change, and that will ripple out and affect the people that you encounter. It'll affect your organizations, and it'll affect the whole world. We are far more powerful than we realize. We have ripple effects that go out. That's the higher purpose that unites humanity, to wake up and love each other. And that, my friends, is leading with love. Thank you so very much. Thank you. You want to do a wrap? I think we're going a little late. 3 questions. Like appreciations. There's 3 questions, and then we're done. If anybody has a question.
Thank you so much, John, for sharing this. As a student, I always have this dilemma. So I've been listening all day, and the key takeaway for me is that change starts at the top, and leaders can bring about change in a more efficient manner. And the debate I have with myself regularly is that if you have to be at the top, do you join the system, be part of it, be part of the toxicity, and then once you're at the top, do what you've actually been meaning to do, versus hold on to your values even when you're at the bottom and make your path to the top slowly, but stick to your values. So the core question is, do ends define means? And what's your thought on tackling this dilemma? Is it internalizing oppression, or is it the pragmatic way to reach the top and then have the most impact?
I think that's like 5 questions, but look, I mean, I told you my story. I told you what I did. I followed my heart. I found my purpose, created a company. So that's my answer. I can't tell you what your purpose is or your direction should be. I can only share my own journey, and you have to find your own way. Personally, obviously, I'm an entrepreneur, so I'm a great believer of, I mean, you already answered it the way you structured the question. Should I go in this toxic world and try to raise to the top? Do I need to be an asshole and a jerk, and then someday I'll be a good person? You need to be a good person right now. Right now. And if you can't be a good person in the organization you're in, leave that organization. Go find another one or start one yourself. That's my answer to that question. Question number 2.
First of all, thanks for killing the world domination.
Where are you?
Here. Oh, sorry.
Oh, good.
I need to read it up. Thanks for killing the world domination metaphor in my talk. That's my appreciation. And the question is, you said you should try to listen to everyone. And do you actually practice that? Like,
no, of course not.
Okay.
I am continuing to try to learn and grow all the time. I do not hold myself out as a perfect human being, enlightened person. I just am who I am. I'm trying to share what I've learned. And and there's a saying, you teach what you're trying to learn. I'm teaching something I'm still trying to learn. So I'm a lot better listener today than I used to be, but I'm not as good a listener as I want to be. Question number 3. Good. Just 2 questions. Great.
John, let me ask you that question. Will you stay a little longer? Will you be around for some personal conversations?
The only reason I'm going to say no to that is because we did run a little long. I got started late, and I ran a little long, and I have a dinner reservation at 7. So, and I have people waiting. So I made a commitment, and I thought I'd be finished. So,
Thank you so much for coming over. Thank you so much for inspiring us.
My question is very, very quick. Did you actually end up getting your degree?
I got an honorary degree. No, I'll tell you a story. This is a good way to finish this thing. So, and this was a lesson I learned, a very important lesson I learned about integrity and also about love. And sometimes those can conflict. So my mother died in 1987. And the last time I saw my mother on her deathbed, she said, "John, I want you to promise me that you will go back to school and get your degree." She said, your father and I, we gave you a good foundation in life, and you are wasting it. You are nothing but a grocer. You could be a doctor, John. You could be a doctor. You're smart enough. You could be a lawyer. Make something of yourself and promise me, just promise me you'll go back to school. And so this is a very important lesson, because what I said at the time was what I felt like was the truth. And so I thought I was very authentic. And I said, "Mom, I'm never going to go back to school. Someday, I'm going to get an honorary degree." So when I got the honorary degree at Raj's former school, and I was doing the commencement speech, they gave me this honorary degree, and I said, "You've allowed me to fulfill a deathbed promise to my mother, so I'm deeply grateful." But you know what? As I've gotten older and a little wiser, I wish I'd lied. I decided that I was so full of my own integrity, and that this was my mother dying. A little white lie of kindness so she could slip off in peace, that was the right thing to do. So if I could go back and change that, I would. I've had people say, "Oh, your mother knows that you did, how successfully." I said, "My mother, I don't know what happened to my mother. I've never talked to her since 1987. I don't have any idea if there's an afterlife." So that was a learning for me. That's my final lesson, or the final sharing there. Sometimes integrity and love can be in a clash, and I would choose love today in that situation. So I didn't go back to school and get a degree. And I've never left school. Every day is school. I just stopped listening to professors. That's all. Thank you.